and we will get to the text. There we go. Okay, so let's take
on the internet. The internet is not working.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we remember where we were in Act 4, right? Let's just pull this, right? We were dealing with that whole scene with Malcolm and Macduff, when Malcolm was testing Macduff to ensure that Macduff is going to be loyal. Now they're setting out to take out Macbeth, who, as we discovered in Act 4 and even earlier to a large extent, has really gone off the deep end, right? And very important to keep reminding yourselves that you need to be attentive to the transformation of Macbeth. Remember how what he was like at the beginning and what he's like at the end. It is one of Shakespeare's play that has, you know, a clear movement from into really bad guy. All right, even we can argue even into an evil guy. All right, once he orders the murder of Macduff's family. You know, this, and remember, we covered this and it's in the previous videos, so by all means go and review that, where we see that Macbeth really transforms. He's no longer humming and hawing, no more wondering, no longer needs Lady Macbeth to egg him on. He's taking control. He's even pushing Lady Macbeth away to a certain extent. He's not consulting her anymore. Whereas at the beginning, he was ready to stop doing everything. It's an important idea to remind yourself of, is remember that Macbeth was thinking, okay, if these prophecies are true, I'll just sit back and let them happen, which is similar to what Banquo was how Banquo was approaching it. But then he takes action to make it happen. And this gets into this bit of a confusion regarding the prophecies in terms of would they have happened anyways? All right, the supernatural powers that are outside of our control, and how much control does Macbeth have? All right. Yeah, I mean, again, where we fully see him descending into his evil or arguably madness, there's a number of arguments can be made for a number of areas. What's I think most important about that is the progression. All right, and asking yourself along the way, you know, how much is it facilitated for him by Lady Macbeth or by other circumstances, and where exactly he crosses the line. Well, again, that's something that you would want to reflect on and make an argument for. Okay. All right. So that brings us up to Act 5. Now, one of the things to be very attentive to in terms of structure in the play, and I'm sure you all noticed it, is notice how short the scenes are in Act 5. And it very much creates a hectic atmosphere. Things move very, very quickly in Act 5. Boom, 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 boom. And that is exhibited and manifest in these very short scenes. All right. So you want to keep that in mind, that builds a certain tone, right? A certain atmosphere, but also fits in with what's going on now, because now everything has been set up and now we're rushing to the climax of the play. And a lot happens, and it happens quickly. All right, so note that speed. So when we start Act 5, right? We have the doctor and the waiting gentlewoman right here. What are they talking about? Well, this is now notice that we haven't seen much of Lady Macbeth for a while. All right. So Macbeth has kind of been keeping her on the side. She's no longer playing a prominent role. It's noticeable, her absence. Now we find out where is she, what state of mind she is in, and so on. And what do we learn here in the first scene? Well, she's sleepwalking, right? That's what this is indicating to us. And she's acting very bizarre while she sleepwalks. Things to note, again, with the doctor, when was it she last walked? This is telling us that she's sleepwalking since His Majesty went into the field, since Majesty is the king, that's Macbeth, has been in the field preparing for war. Explains what she's doing, unlocks her closet, takes forth paper, fold it, write upon it, read it, afterwards seal it, and again return to bed. What does, again, and you guys at this stage, jump in. This is the time, usually ask questions if things aren't clear. Jump in while we're doing this. Last class, Act 5, I need to know that you guys are grasping what's going on. So what does it mean when she's taking forth the paper, folding it, writing upon it, and reading it? Okay? All right, this is referencing back, she is in her sleepwalking state, she is reliving things that have transpired, right? So this is referring, if you remember, the letter that she gets that Macbeth sends to her, spelling out the situation, right? So she is going back over these things. Remember as well, we saw in Act 3, when they now have achieved their ambition, and remember the importance of ambition. Okay, we're going to do these things. We have this prophecy from the Weird Sisters that you're going to be king, and we're going to make sure it happens by taking action as well to make it happen. Now we're king, and if you remember, there was that whole bit where she was going, okay, but this isn't as good as I thought it would be, right? There's something here. Okay, we've achieved it. Now what? And now we have to maintain it. And this is perhaps more for Macbeth. And this involves a lot of things, seeing conspiracies everywhere, and how do we hold on to our power now that we've achieved the power, which it addresses the issue of when that ambition, that idea of ambition that both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth have, is not thought out all the way. The ambition is to become king. Okay, but then what? And they were not looking at it beyond there. All right, and there was a lot of hints that, you should.
And she also like scrubbing her hands.
Well, this is, again, one of the more famous images in Shakespeare, is she's washing her hands.
Yeah,
right?
scrubbing her hands from blood.
From blood, right? Is the blood on her hands?
No, there's no blood on her hands.
Not literally.
But she's imagining that there's blood on her hands.
That's the figurative nature of it, right? So, and this is speaking now to what is clearly Lady Macbeth is reflecting on what's transpired and is feeling guilt, the blood on her hands, which of course, remember, when they actually committed the murder, they had blood on their hands. And Lady Macbeth was very cavalier about it. Well, just telling Macbeth, because Macbeth was the one, oh my God, looking at his hands with the blood. And Lady Macbeth said, just wash it. Get rid of it. Don't worry about it. Now this is coming back to haunt her, literally, in her sleep, as she sleepwalks.
But the characteristic it changed. Like the characteristic of Macbeth at first had became for Lady Macbeth at the end. And the characteristic of Macbeth had become the characteristic of Lady Macbeth at first.
Yeah, there's this reversal of roles. Yes, not exactly, but certainly in temper, it actually is, right? So Lady Macbeth now, but as she takes over the role that we saw Macbeth having at the beginning, which was a certain amount of doubt, but she's now taking it to extreme, right? As Macbeth, who now becomes much more aggressive, takes it further than Lady Macbeth took it. Now he's taking it to an extreme. So you're right, they reverse roles to a certain extent, but then they take those reverse roles and they max them out, if you will. So what we're
Sir,
yeah,
she's not exactly having doubts. She knows she's done something wrong. She right away has regrets. Whereas Macbeth in the beginning, he was thinking, should I not? What are the, he was thinking through the ramifications a little bit of what would happen if he were to kill the king.
mhm.
As soon as the deed is done, in the text even it says she was ashamed. And that's just, there's no, I don't think there's a switched role. She has gone mad in her sense of guilt.
She's gotten mad in her sense of guilt, but the guilt is predicated on much of what we saw Macbeth contemplating earlier. Right now, she's, if you, in terms of the reversal of roles, if she had been able to think along these lines like Macbeth was thinking at the beginning, right now she's regretting those things. She's regretting that she didn't do those things, and that's where the connection with the way that Macbeth was at the beginning of the play. But of course, it's a bit of a moot point because it's gone to such extremes. I mean, at this stage, Lady Macbeth is arguably lost her mind. Okay?
Like she lost her mind, but I don't understand how she died.
She kills herself.
She kills herself, like by how she killed herself.
We don't know
It's not
exactly. We don't know exactly because it happens as so much of the murders and killings happen in this play.
I suddenly saw the sentence. She is the queen is dead.
Yeah. Okay. So and this is again a common element of this play. It happens off stage, right? We see this. Remember, we had the debate: what happened to Macduff's wife? Right, the last time we see Macduff's wife, she's being chased by the guards. We find out later through Ross that she was killed, but that also happens off stage. Okay. So what we're having here is her going back and reflecting on things that have transpired in the past. We note that this is all while she is fast asleep. The doctor is noticing that this, and we've seen this theme before, right, is the relation to nature. What they've done is unnatural. All right, remember we talked about this in terms of the regicide. To kill a king is an unnatural act. It's not just an act of murder, but because it's the king, God's anointed on earth, etc. This becomes against nature. And that's where we've seen imagery of nature and how that's portrayed. Is again something that you want to be attentive to. All right. What benefit of sleep and do the effects watching in this slumbering agitation besides her walking and other actual performance? What at any time have you heard her say? The doctor asked. She doesn't want to say, the gentlewoman. You may need it is most meet you should. Neither to you nor anyone having no witness to confirm my speech. I'm not going to tell you what I've seen her doing or saying, because there's no one to corroborate that. All right, which is emphasizing that what she's saying and doing is that extreme. Okay,
But
and that
like she's saying, like there's no proof of what she's saying is true.
right, and
there's no witnesses.
There's no witnesses, and therefore she doesn't want to say because it's probably not going to be believed. And of course, it's the queen. You can't say things.
It will lead her to her death.
Could lead to her death. It's a smart move not to, unless you have a witness who can confirm that what you're seeing her do, and so on. Okay.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sorry, question about that one. Here I thought that the gentlewoman was actually loyal to Lady Macbeth, and that's why she wouldn't say. But also, as in a smart move. She sees what's going on, and it's being written again and again how Macbeth was a tyrant and things weren't good for Scotland. So she wanted to protect herself. She's not going to say she wants to live. Can't we interpret it as that she didn't want to say?
The gentlewoman is saying it because she wants to live?
Yes, because she sees what's going on. She's not going to open her mouth and say something against because if she were to repeat what Lady Macbeth says, and then confirm all the suspicion from the people around them, then she's as good as dead.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much what was just being said, right? She's not going to repeat this because no one's going to believe it. And if she would repeat it on her own, what she's going to be doing is accusing Lady Macbeth, and that would be ill-advised to say the least. She's the queen. So I think you're both right on that, okay? But it emphasizes the extremity of Lady Macbeth's behavior. I'm not going to repeat this because to repeat this would mean I would be bad-mouthing the queen, and I'm not going to do that with no witnesses. I mean, that's her main reason, right? That it says it right there. It's because there's no witnesses. If there's more witnesses, then she feels a little more secure. But yeah, of course, you're not going to go out accusing the king or the queen of heinous things and think that you're going to survive it, right? So it's a combination thereof, okay? So here we have then Lady Macbeth enters in with the taper, which is a candle, right? So here she comes. Observe, stand close. How came she by that light? Remember, we talked often about the importance of acknowledging, recognizing light, darkness. She's walking around with this candle. It's important because we're going to see another reference to this later on. Okay, why it stood by her. She has a light by her continually. 'Tis commanded. Okay, doctor says, why she got that candle? She has a candle lit all the time. She has commanded it. All right, which is again speaking to her. She doesn't want to be in darkness. Right? She needs. I mean, it's adding to this very eerie and somewhat ghostly image of Lady Macbeth at this point. Her eyes are open. What is it she does now? Look how she rubs her hands. And the gentlewoman then, it is an accustomed action with her. That means she's doing, this is what the gentlewoman has been seeing. To seem thus washing her hands. I have known her to continue this for a quarter of an hour. It's a long time. Now Lady Macbeth. Yet here's a spot. So she's in this process of rubbing her hands together, washing her hands. No matter how long and hard she washes them, she still sees a spot of blood. The blood on her hands. Right? That's the image there, one of the more famous images in all of Shakespeare. Dr. Hark, she speaks. And Lady Macbeth, see here again, one of her famous speeches. Out, damned spot. Out, I say. 1, 2, why then 'tis time to do it. Hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie, a soldier afeard. What need we fear, who knows it, when none can call our power to account? Okay, so what she's asking, what need we fear when none can call our power to account? Doesn't matter, right? This is where the guilt element comes in. Yet who would have thought the old man to have so much blood in him? Right, so we have that image, right, that symbol of blood. The old man, of course, is referring to the king, King Duncan. And that he had so much blood that she cannot get the blood off her hands. Will these hands never be clean? And for her, no, they won't. Okay, so it's at some point, and again, it's a bit not confusing, I suppose, but you know, again, we haven't seen Lady Macbeth in a while. And when we're seeing her at this point, she's She's, for all intents and purposes, gone. Looking at her hands, and they will never be clean, no matter how many times or how long or how hard she scrubs her hands. She can't wash the blood of King Duncan off her hands. Okay. Starting the doctor, go to, you have known what you should not, right? That's who's that being directed to? You have known what you should not. So, right? That's the gentlewoman. She has spoke what she should not. I am sure of that. Heaven knows what she has known. Okay, so again, it comes back to what we were just discussing. This is why the gentlewoman is not going to go and blab it around, because she understands and recognizes the severity of it. Macbeth, Lady Macbeth goes on, the smell of blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. Oh. So it's the smell as well. The blood, the smell of blood. The doctor is like, the heart is solely charged. The gentleman says, I would not have such a heart in my bosom for the dignity of a whole body. I mean, they're recognizing, they're acknowledging, and it's very important for us as an audience, because we don't see the stage directions. The stage directions here are being given by the doctor and the gentlewoman. And again, if you watch any productions of this, it's played out many ways, the way that Lady Macbeth is walking around in her sleepwalking state and the way she's rubbing her hands and so on. Doctor acknowledges, this disease is beyond my practice. Yet I have known those which have walked in their sleep, who have died holily in their beds. Okay, but it's beyond him. And the holily is referencing what he'll be mentioning later on. This is beyond him. This isn't about a doctor giving medicines or anything like that. This goes well beyond that into what is holy. Okay? Macbeth again, wash your hands, put on your nightgown, look not so pale. I mean, you remember these? This is the advice that she was giving to Macbeth. You know, how you have to look. Make sure no one, don't act that way. You got to act the part. No one can know we did this. You have to put on this mask. Tell you yet again, Bank was buried. He cannot come out of his grave, right? That's referring back to the banquet, when Banquet did come out of the grave. But remember, only Macbeth saw the ghost of Banquet. She goes on, to bed. There's knocking at the gate. Knocking at the gate. Remember knocking at the gate? That's when Macduff was knocking at the gate after the murder. Come, give me your hand. Look, note this as well. Come. Give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone. To bed. Well, who's she talking to here? Give me your hand. Remember, she's sleepwalking. She's all by herself, but she's dreaming, hallucinating, however you want to look at it. Give me your hand. She's referring to Macbeth. Give me your hand, because this is again talking about, you know, look not so pale. Come, give me your hand. What's that knocking at the gate is referring to what we saw earlier. Give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone. Okay. Again, without jumping back, all this is echoing things that happened previous in the play. That's what I meant earlier, that she is now going back to all these things. And now she's obviously looking at it and engaging it from a very different perspective. What's done cannot be done has a direct mirror to when she says in Act 3, what's done is done, if you remember. Right? What's done is done. There's nothing more you can do about it. Let's move on. Now her line is, what's done cannot be undone. All right. You see, again, these are all echoes of things that she's done or said earlier.
Can you repeat what knocking At the gate.
The knocking at the gate is, if you recall, there's knocking after them when they're murdering Duncan. And the knocking of the gate was Macduff coming in to the castle. The what's done and cannot be undone is mirroring, echoing, if you will, when she was saying to Macbeth, what's done is done. Okay, the point being, okay, that all this is her reminiscing, reflecting on what happened earlier. And this becomes important when we get to when she dies and what Macbeth says in that tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow, where he is going to be talking about the concept of time, that you can't escape your past, and that the past blends with the present and will dictate the future. And we'll talk about that when we get to scene 5. Okay? And then to bed, to bed, to bed. So now she goes to bed. Now the doctor is going to, again, and the doctor plays a pivotal role here, showing that the nature of her illness for what it actually is, right? Foul whisperings are abroad, unnatural deeds. Again, nature, unnatural deeds do breed unnatural troubles. Her state of mind, okay, this is not physical. Infected minds to their death pillows will discharge their secrets. More needs she the divine than the physician. Okay, God forgive us all. Right, so it's recognizable. And again, these are acting as stage directions in terms of how Lady Macbeth is playing this out. We can only judge what she's doing by how the doctor and the gentlewoman are responding to it and how they analyze it. And here's the doctor, and it's very important that it's a doctor, because the doctor's in a position to, and only a doctor would be in a position to really say this, that she doesn't need a doctor, right? She needs some element of the divine. This is well beyond a doctor's area of expertise. And that's where we get into the sense of guilt and sin, right? She's feeling guilty because of the sin they committed, a sin of monumental proportions insofar as it shatters the natural order, because it was, in particular, a regicide against the king. Right. So here
You can say like her inner self have woken up.
Sorry?
You can say like her inner self has woken up.
Yeah, I mean, something within her, all right? Something.
The good side of her has woken up.
Well, it's not necessarily.
The guilt side.
The guilt. It's not necessarily the good side, but there's certainly now, upon this reflection and going over what has happened in the past, a recognition that there's guilt. Now, guilt is a tough concept to fully describe, right? I mean, guilt is one of those things. Without guilt, we're capable of doing terrible deeds. Guilt is what prevents us, or in this case, is what destroys us after we've done those deeds. Okay? Often guilt is used in a way that if you are anticipating, we get a bit of this and tying it into the way Macbeth was at the beginning when he's musing over these things, you know, and maybe I shouldn't do this because he's right. I mean, Duncan's a nice guy and he's been really good to me. Well, that's a sense of guilt trying to tell him, you know, don't do this. You would be guilty. You would feel guilty. It would be sinful. It would be wrong. Try not to do it. Okay? Now she's doing this, but it's after the fact. And if it's after the fact, well, as she says, what's done can't be undone. It's too late now. And that's what she can't deal with. You can't go back and undo what you've done. So now you have to live with it. And that's what's tearing her apart. That's why she's reflecting on the things that she did. Right? But now there is no going back. All right. We get to scene 2. We have the, I'll try to go a little quicker here. These are all the noblemen, right? with soldiers. This with the soldiers. And here we have Malcolm and Macduff, and Seward, right? Remember, Seward is who is allied themselves, the English who have allied themselves with Malcolm, who are now going to Scotland to get rid of Macbeth. What we get here as well is the first mention where, where are they? Near Birnam Wood. Now that should alert us to what the weird sisters, the witches, said about, Macbeth.
The forest will move.
Macbeth, you will be fine unless Birnam Wood moves. And that's when Macbeth goes, well, a forest can't get up and move, so I'm safe. Remember, there's that, and that you will not be killed by anyone born of a woman. Those are the things that Macbeth has been told that has helped him go over the edge, because he feels invincible. Right? They're riddles.
But he said, like, there's a part that he says, like, it's been a long time that I hadn't been frightened.
Right. Because as we see, because what does he have to fear? There's no way that a forest can move, no way that the forest of Birnam is going to be able to move, and everyone is born of a woman. So I'm safe. My reign will continue, and no one can kill me. No one can beat me. Right? And this is where we're going to see how those were riddles that were able to happen. Right? And we see how, when we'll be watching, how Macbeth, when he starts realizing that, is kind of falls apart. Again, this is just to reiterate that they're seeing Macbeth as the tyrant. On here, they're talking about the fortifications that he's holding. It's a beautiful play here on buckle and belt, but that's again a play with language. We may come back to it, but I want to move through here a little bit more. But note here how these noblemen, these Scots, are now talking and clearly understanding where Macbeth has gone. Now does he feel his secret murder sticking on his hands, right? Well, that's obviously going back to Lady Macbeth sticking on her hands, the blood. But what's important here is they're talking about the soldiers that Macbeth commands. Those he commands move only in command, nothing in love. And this is an important commentary on leadership, right? Whether it's a military leader or a king or a political leader, the people are going to follow you to some degree. But if they don't believe in you, if they don't have a love for you and for what you stand for, then they're not very reliable. Now does he feel his title hang loose about him, like a giant's robe upon a dwarfish thief, right? So they know that Macbeth is in trouble. Macbeth doesn't care, because again, he feels he's safe because of the prophecies, okay? And this, again, what we're seeing here in their discussions comes back to, remember I told you to be attentive to the nature imagery, right? The sovereign flower drown the weeds, right? Weeds take over a garden, destroy the flowers, all right? So this is now having to get the weeds out of the garden of the kingship. Make we now our march towards, and there again, just reminding us of Birnam. As an audience, we'd be sitting there going, oh, okay, something's going to happen with this, because we know at this point, as an audience, and certainly an audience in the theater, and certainly in Shakespeare time, at this stage, no one can have sympathy for Macbeth. All right. Again, one of the few Shakespearean plays where it's really clear with the main character, with the protagonist, that he's got to go. All right, so now the question is how? How can they possibly get rid of Macbeth? Because we as an audience are saying the same thing. Well, a forest can't move and everyone is born from a woman. How's this gonna play out? But we're getting little clues, right? Mentioning of the forest. And now we have scene 3, and here's Macbeth. Bring me no more reports, let them all fly. And here again, feeding off of the previous scene, till Burnham would remove to Dunsinane. I cannot taint with fear. I am not going to have any fear until these woods miraculously get up and move. And what's the boy Malcolm? Was he not born of a woman? I don't fear Malcolm. Why should I fear Malcolm? Because no man born of a woman can hurt me. The spirits that know all mortal consequences have pronounced me thus. Those spirits, right, the supernatural, are the weird sisters, are the witches. Fear not, Macbeth, no man that's born of woman shall ever have power upon me. So he's dismissing all this. Don't because remember, he's here, doctor and attendants. Okay, bring me no more reports. I don't care. You tell me they're coming here to attack me, they can't beat me. That's his attitude. And the mind I sway, by the heart I bear, shall never sag with doubt nor shake with fear. Again, as was just mentioned, he has no fear. He's utterly confident. Servant, what devil damn thee, black thou cream-faced lunatics. Great play on language here. There is 10,000 geese, villain. Soldiers, sir, right? This is now, it's an interesting point here. So the servant comes in and he's calling them names. The devil damn thee, black thou cream-faced loon. Whence goest thou with that goose look? And there's 10,000 and he's playing with them. Geese, villain. It's an indication here. There's a bit of nonsense, obviously. And it's speaking to Macbeth's state of mind at this point to some degree, right? There's indications here. We'll get that. Yes, the armor, we're going to get to that. It's important. But it's important to note here, this bit of nonsense is suggesting that and we've seen this already, but now it's coming more to the front, that he's losing it. We're seeing Lady Macbeth clearly seems to have lost her mind in her sleepwalking state. The doctor says, I can't help her. This is beyond me. But now we're seeing this manic Macbeth behaving erratically and always justifying it and showing no fear because of the prophecies that came from a supernatural source. What soldiers? And the servant tells him, the English force, so you please. This is the whole army that's coming with Malcolm and Macduff. The servant exits. Satan. Now it gets even a little more interesting with Macbeth. Okay. I am sick at heart. Okay. When I behold, now Satan, he's calling to someone. He's calling to Satan, his servant. I am sick at heart when I behold, Satan, I say, this push will cheer me ever or deceit me now. I have lit. Now, again, this is one of the more intriguing aspects of Macbeth's character here, and I think it's going to address the question that was brought up about how he reacts after he finds out that Lady Macbeth is dead. He has achieved his ambition of becoming king. It has put him over the edge, where now he is committing heinous, heinous crimes. So what, if we look at what Macbeth was like when he was toying with the idea of becoming king, oh, wouldn't that be nice? Okay. Now he's achieved it. It's not what either he or Lady Macbeth thought it would be. Lady Macbeth goes one route into this madness and solitary existence in that sleepwalking state. Macbeth gets manic in trying to hold on to his power. It doesn't seem to correspond with what he was anticipating at the beginning, what it would be like to become king. Because at that stage, he's not anticipating that he would have to necessarily do all these horrible things to achieve that goal, to satisfy that ambition. Now he has, and he sits here at this point saying, I am sick at heart. I have lived long enough. My way of life is fallen into the sear, the yellow leaf. All right, the yellow leaf is a leaf when it's getting ready to fall off the tree. Again, the nature imagery. And that which should accompany old age, as honor, love, obedience, troops of friends, I must not look to have. Right? So there's manic behavior seeming, perhaps touching on a sense of madness, but this is very astute and recognizing and honest with himself. And that which should accompany old age, as honor, love, obedience, troops of friends, I must not look to have. I'm never going to have this in my old age. But in their stead, curses, not loud but deep, mouth-honored breath, which the poor heart would fain deny and dare not. He's acknowledging his damned state, if you will. He knows in old age he's not going to have the things that most people seek in old age. He knows he's done wrong, as does Lady Macbeth. How it manifests in terms of their behavior is very different. Right? We saw how Lady Macbeth has isolated and gone off through that guilt. What's going on with Macbeth here? He's acknowledging it, and yet he's still holding on to it, almost as if he feels there's nothing to do. And again, nothing can be done because what's done cannot be undone. This is it. This is where I'm at. And in his mind as well, and I can't be beaten. So this is the way it's going to be. No matter how hard they try to unseat me. Calls and saying, what more news? All is confirmed, my lord, which has reported. And this comes back to the question that was asked about the armor. And it's, again, very telling about, and difficult to fully ascertain. Right? He refers to his armor all the time. I'll fight till from my bones my flesh be hacked. Give me my armor. And Satan goes, "'Tis not needed yet. You don't need it. They're not here yet. You don't need to get all in your armor. It's heavy. It's cumbersome. I'll put it on." Right? Again, it speaks to his erratic behavior at this point, and his fixation on him and him alone. I can take them all on. They may be able to beat my army, but they can't beat me because Burnham Forest is not going to move. And no one can hurt me who's been born from a woman. Hang those that talk of fear. Give me mine armor.
Sir,
Yeah.
just one thing. In Shakespeare, there's something that they don't give more details, like how he died, how did the war begin, how the stages happen. This is missing. Some of the big points are missing.
Well, okay. Now, this is, again, it's a really good question. It's a very important question. And this is one of the things that we've been discussing. We, unlike when we're reading a short story or a novel, okay, we don't have that narrator to tell us how everything transpires. So a lot of it is up to us to be able to figure that out based on what the other characters on the stage are saying. Okay, so we don't know exactly how Macbeth dies. We do know he gets his head, that after he's dead, Macduff cuts off his head. Okay, but what's important there is not exactly how he dies. The holding the head is, adds to the macabre nature of the play that we've seen. But again, what's important is, as with Lady Macduff, we don't know exactly how they kill her, but she's killed. And that's what becomes important in terms of how people react to that news. All right. So yes, no, we're not told all these details. That's one of the elements of theater. And that poses a whole set of challenges that we have as readers. That is what we've been doing all through this play, is trying to put that together based on, it's like the whole scene we were watching with Lady Macbeth when she's sleepwalking.
But like at the first, like they gave details how Macduff killed the guy in the war. They gave every simple details, like how he put the sword from his throat down.
Yeah, no,
But like the most important details, they are not describing them.
no, and what would tell us, and then obviously those details, I think it's safe to follow that up with, then those details aren't as important now as they were then, right? The importance of showing the details and how people were killed at the first was to set a tone of the violence that is infused in this play. That's established. Now, I mean, we have a pretty graphic scene at the end when Macduff is holding Macbeth's head, for sure. But for instance, we don't see Lady Macbeth when she dies. But we don't need that at this point anymore, because that tone of violence, of gruesomeness, if you will, and which fits in with the blood, has already been established. We're already susceptible to that. We're already been brought into that space. So there's no need in going into that detail anymore. It would become gratuitous. And that could end up having a negative impact on now what's more important than the graphic imagery is what transpires in terms of how it impacts the other characters. Okay? So, I mean, don't be concerned about that. I mean, it's a great observation. But again, we see so much in the first, we see this in a short story as well. We see this in all literature, is what's established at the beginning sets a tone, lays a foundation. So it doesn't have to be repeated to the same extent as we proceed on. It's already established. We already have got a sense of bloodiness and battle and violence. And, you know, just as a reminder, you know, the head at the end. Okay? So here we have him going on again about his armor. Macbeth asks the doctor, how does your patient doctor, right? Who's the patient? Lady Macbeth. Not so sick, my lord, as she is troubled with thick coming fancies that keep her from her rest. Okay? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna address these questions that are being asked in the chat. Hold on to them. I'm gonna address them once we get through this scene, okay? So he's talking about Lady Macbeth. Macbeth says, cure her of that. Canst thou not minister to mind diseased? So now he's looking at the doctor to cure Lady Macbeth, but he's acknowledging that her mind is diseased. Pluck from the memory of rooted sorrow, raise out the written troubles of the brain, and with some sweet oblivious antidote, cleanse the stuffed bosom of that perilous stuff which weighs upon the heart. And the doctor's response, Macbeth is saying, you know, okay, I know that she's lost her mind. I know that she has a diseased mind. Fix her. And the doctor says, therein the patient must minister to himself. No, I can't. Okay. Macbeth goes on again. Well, then throw physic to the dogs, and basically, you know, well, what good are you? I'll none of it. Come, put on my armor. He's constantly now, we see the repetition of the armor. He is just fixated now on the battle to come and his own prowess as a warrior. And of course, having the added element of the safety he has as someone who doesn't think anyone can harm him. Right? Find her disease and purge it to a sound and pristine health. So it's important here as well, because we're starting to see he's concerned about Lady Macbeth. we have to start asking ourselves as we get closer to scene 5, how concerned is she with Lady Macbeth? Because again, noticeable how he was pushing her away, not consulting her anymore. He's becoming more and more self-absorbed. But we saw how close and intimate they've been in the past. Clearly that's been ruptured. I mean, just the fact that they're both, losing it, right? But it speaks as, again, more, a lot to the dissent as a result of the actions for both of them, okay? It's just, yeah, I mean, well, okay, so let me just finish up with this. He's again, we'll stop at this scene for a minute. I'll address a few of these questions. Bring it after me. He's talking about the armor. I will not be afraid of death and bane till Burnham Forest come to Belzonane. All right, again, reminding us to the audience why he's not fearful. And, the doctor here, where I from doesn't away and clear, prophet again should hardly draw me near. He wants out of there. All right. So let me look at, because a number of these questions have come here. So let's just take a look. They cannot beat him as a prince. So why is he even contemplating putting on the armor when he changes his mind? Yeah, I think that's more of his stature as a warrior. I mean, he's a soldier. He's the king. The armor, yes, it's protective. He doesn't really apparently need protection because he's no man born of woman can hurt him. But it's also stature. He's not going to go out there and meet his enemies, dressed in his underwear, right? He's going to go in full regalia. So the armor, it's a great question. His armor is representative of his stature and his status. This is why, again, he doesn't even need the armor at this point because they're not even close yet. That's what, Satan tells him.
I think like he wants to be prepared for the fight.
Well, partly, but again, the fight is far away. That's why Satan says over here, 'tis not needed. Your armor's not needed yet. They're not close yet. We're not going to be fighting them for a long time. But he's anticipating that, and what he's looking for is that regalia of his stature as the king. So can this indicate of his unstable state of mind or how he chooses what he likes from those super? Absolutely. I mean, this is what this is demonstrating to us, is it is an unstable mind. And it's an unstable mind that is now, and understandably so, and out of necessity, fixated on what the supernatural powers told him. Because if he doesn't have the protection that the witches told him he has, you will not be killed by anyone born of woman, and you're safe as king until the forest moves, he's losing everything else. He's lost the respect of his soldiers, right? That was indicated earlier. They don't follow him out of love for him, right? And he doesn't care because he's fixated on the supernatural. Because everything that they said was going to happen, happened. But of course, it poses a very intriguing question, and one that I will encourage you to be thinking about. Yes, they've prophesied this. Yes, it was predicted to him that he would become king, and these things came true. But of course, he had something to do with it. Right? Again, comes back to what we talked about earlier. If he hadn't done anything, if he hadn't sent out to kill the king and so on, would he still become king? We'll never know, because he did do those things. But that needs to be something that we certainly should be thinking about, and something that maybe Macbeth is thinking about as well. He is being unreasonable, not very much, it seems. It's just his honor to fix her. Yeah, in terms of his relationship with Lady Macbeth at this stage, again, it's one of those things we can't find an absolute answer to this. And how much does he still care about her? And that, again, I know we're running late here today, so I really want to get up to scene 5 where we can really look at that in a little more detail. This is now scene 4. Malcolm and young Seward and the rest are here, the soldiers marching. And yeah, okay. I want to get to that scene, and then we'll look at the comments again. This, of course, is letting us know what this scene is here. They're in the wood of Burnham. Malcolm says, "Let every soldier hew him down a bough and bear it before him. Thereby shall we shadow the numbers of our host and make discovery ere in report of us." So here now we're seeing the dismantling of the first prophecy, if you will, that Macbeth is relying on to keep him safe. Malcolm is telling everyone, cut down a bough of a tree, right, and hold it in front of you. Thereby we will hide the numbers of our host. We will hide how many we are. They won't know how many we are when we go and we move on the castle. All right? It shall be done. Whether there's sorry, get rid of this. There we go. I want to quickly move. This is, again, what is important here. Note how short the scenes are. We're going bang, bang, bang. Here we have Malcolm, Macduff, and Seward getting ready. They're moving the troops. They know that they're in a strong position. They don't know about the prophecy. They're not doing this because they know that this is, Macbeth thinks that, that he's safe unless these trees move. This is just happenstance. All right? And this is just them getting ready towards which they advance the war. Right? They head in. Now we get into scene 5. Very important scene. Hang out our banners on the outward walls. The cry still they come. Our castle strength will laugh a siege to scorn. He's still being arrogant, feeling safe, and so on. Then we hear a cry of women within. What is that noise? It is the cry of women. Good Lord. Okay. Just get this up. So here we have, I had almost forgot the taste of fears. The time has been, my senses would have cooled to hear a night shriek. And my fell or of hair would at a dismal treasy's rouse and stir as life were in it. I have supped full with horrors, direness familiar to my slaughterous thoughts cannot once start me. He's saying, I almost forgot what it feels like to be fearless, because he seems to get a little startled by the cry of the women. But then he's saying, but nothing can startle me now. He's acknowledging how much he's changed. Satan returns. Wherefore was that cry? The queen, my lord, is dead. Now, how?
Just like one question, one simple question.
Yep.
Like in the scene in the Act 4, they say armor's head. It means like when Macduff cuts the head of Macbeth, armor's head. It is related. It's not related.
Like, I don't think. It could be to some degree, but he's talking about the armored head, that he has armor on his head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. It could be. I don't think we want to jump back to scene 4 at this point. We haven't even gotten to Macbeth's death yet. So maybe save that for when we get to Macbeth's death, and maybe we can take a look at it. Okay. So what we have here is, I would argue, one of the great speeches in all of Shakespeare. But it's an intriguing one, because how we read this, how you interpret this, is vitally important in getting an understanding of where Macbeth really is at this point. He just found out that Lady Macbeth is dead. Okay? How did she die? We're not even informed at this point. Okay? He's not informed. But notice how reflective he becomes here. She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Okay. She should have died hereafter. She should have died later on. Okay, so that's a semblance of a certain amount of remorse. She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. What word? Notice it's a period. It's the end of the sentence. We don't know the word until he kicks it in here. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. Okay, so clearly that's the word that's being suggested here because of the repetition. And of course, in that repetition, it almost loses a certain element of its meaning. You go say tomorrow and so on. But of course, it is significant because what we had here is hereafter, future, tomorrow, future, right? Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. Here he's talking about tomorrow, the future. Note how it blends in, creeps in this petty pace, petty, lack of importance, creeping in, this petty pace from day to day, that's the present. To the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays, the past, have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Remember the candle that Lady Macbeth is holding when she's sleepwalking. It has, you can tie it into that because of the candle, but of course, figuratively, it can mean out, out, brief candle being life. It's brief. Once it goes out, it's death. Life's but a walking shadow. Life's but a walking shadow. Candles cast shadows. Walking, when we're walking, if we're walking with a candle, it's casting a shadow. That's life. A walking shadow, a poor player. Again, the word poor. Now he's making a kind of analogy that life is like a poor player. Player in what sense? A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage. Well, that's an actor. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage. That's the stage is where theater is performed and then is heard no more. An hour on the stage, out goes the candle, and heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot. Idiot brings us back up to fool. Fool and idiot. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury. There's a lot of sound, a lot of noise, and a lot of fury, a lot of intensity. Signifying nothing. This is how this is how Macbeth responds to the death of his wife. And it's intriguing because while he seems to be talking about it specifically in terms of the queen, right? The relation, he just found out she is dead. It has this extraordinarily universal quality to it. It's also very much about time. the hereafter, okay? Tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow. Today, yesterday's. It's a blending of this concept of time. How life works this way. Remember, we've been seeing what were they like yesterday? Act 1. What are they like today? Okay. Let me clear this so I can see it better again. Creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, till the end of time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools with a light, candle. Sorry, my terrible picture of a candle. Life's but a walking shadow. You can't have shadow without some kind of light. This conjures up the image of Lady Macbeth that we saw earlier. And the poor player, we are no more. He's talking about himself. He's universalizing it, so he's talking about life in general, that life is no more than this poor player that struts and frets an hour, time again. How long is that hour in relation to a lifetime? Upon the stage is the theater where people perform. The stage is the theater of life where we all perform. And after that hour of strutting and fretting, when the candle goes out, out, brief candle, then we are heard from no more. It is a tale, the tale of life, told by an idiot or fool, which has many implications. It is full of sound and fury, which is kind of noise and intensity, but ultimately signifies nothing. Is he saying this about Lady Macbeth? Is he saying this about himself? Is he saying this about life in general? Arguably all three. But it's quite the commentary. And it's quite revealing of Hamlet's state of mind at this stage. He's just lost Lady Macbeth. We know how it used to be yesterday, in all those yesterdays, how intimate the two of them were. In the yesterdays, how much she was so vital in pushing him, or maybe just confirming in him, opening up the doors for him. Another big question, how much does she push him? And now they have gone separate ways after they have achieved their goal, their ambition. Things were not what they thought it would be. Things fall apart. And ultimately, he's suggesting that it all is meaningless. Does he believe it? Is it a bit of rambling? That's for us to decide. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go quickly through the rest of this. I draw attention to this. It's important. Okay, and I'll talk a bit about it before we wrap up the class. We're probably going to go a few minutes longer, so bear with me. It's worth it because I do want to talk about your final exam at the end. Thou comest to use thy tongue. The story quickly, a messenger comes in. Gracious my Lord, I should report that which I say I saw, but know not how to do it. Messenger comes, he's got something to say. Macbeth, who just found out his wife is dead, says, okay, spit it out, guys, spit it out. Guys going, I want to say this, but I really don't know how to tell you this, buddy. What? I looked towards Burnham, and anon methought the wood began to move. Boom! The moving woods. Macbeth's reaction, predictable. Liar, slave, no. Note as well, and this is important structurally, we have this really significant moment of self-reflection, universal reflection. His wife just died. And before we have a chance to see if this goes anywhere, is he having an awakening? Is he starting to realize, oh my, it's the death of his wife, and oh my God, what have I done? Before we know, The messenger comes in to give him the news that is now going to start everything that he thought his last hope of holding on to things is going to fall apart, because now the forest is moving. A moving grove. Macbeth, of course, is freaking out. If thou speakest false upon the next tree, if you're lying to me, I'm going to hang you. And begin to doubt. And now I pull in resolution, the very important here, and begin to doubt the equivocation of the fiend that lies like truth. And now he quotes, "Fear not till Birnam Wood do come to Dunsinane." Oh, they tricked me. They tricked me. Arm, and out, but he stole, at least we'll die with harness on our back. Harness, armor. Okay, but he still has in his pocket, "No one can hurt me who's born from man." Now we're outside the castle. There's Malcolm, Macduff, and company. Now Malcolm says, "Okay, throw down your leafy screens, all those Burnham pieces of wood that they used, throw them down. Let's go. Fare you well." He sends Seward, right, to lead one part of the attack. Macduff and Malcolm will go and lead the other part. We're in another part of the field. Enter Macbeth. They have tied me to a stake. I cannot fly. He's feeling trapped. Okay, but bear butt like is a reference to a practice in the time of Shakespeare called bear baiting. It was a practice done for entertainment purposes, where they would tie captured bears to posts, and people would taunt the bears to try and get a reaction out of the bears. Very disgusting practice, but very common in Shakespeare's time. It would have been very familiar to Shakespeare's audience, and he is now seeing himself as that bear that is tied to a post, and that is going to be ridiculed. But what's he that was not born of woman? Such a one I am to fear or none. So he's still holding on. Young Seward comes in. Young Seward is attacking, and Macbeth is defending. Macbeth is not concerned about him because, again, you can't hurt me. You were born of woman. They fight, and young Seward is slain. And Macbeth confirmed, "Thou wast born of woman, but swords I smile at, weapons laugh to scorn, brandished by man that's of a woman born. You can't hurt me. You were born of a woman." The significance of Seward, remember, who is this guy? All right, it's young Seward. Young Seward is the son of obviously his father, who was instrumental in supplying the army that Malcolm can use to come and reclaim Scotland. Okay, so the significance is, as we'll see in the next scene, I'll try to touch on it, is how it impacts Seward, his father, and how Seward has a moment of being able to talk about noble death, and that my son died nobly in a cause, and that makes it worth it. In a way, one could argue, to counter the unnatural path that Macbeth took. The death of young Seward in the mind of a noble cause is a natural way down. You'll see this because he asks him, were his wounds in the front or the back? Did he die nobly? And that would fit with a proper natural within this context way. But we'll touch on that as we go on. So Macbeth exit, Macduff enters. Tyrant, show your face. If thou beest slain with no stroke of mine, my wife and children's ghosts will haunt me still. He's reminding us of his revenge quest on Macbeth. Little touch here with fortune. Let me find him fortune, and more I beg not. He's saying, I don't just want Macbeth killed. I want to kill him. Fortune, chance, whatever the powers that be, astrological signs, whatever it is, let me be the one to kill Macbeth. And just a reminder of the supernatural prospects and how that ties in with general thinking in terms of the wheel of fortune, that was very prominent in philosophical discussions and ideas at the time. Enter Malcolm and Seward. This way, my lord, the castle's gently rendered. Castle's been taken relatively easily. The tyrant's people on both sides of the fight, on both sides do fight. The noble thanes do bravely in the war. The day almost itself professes yours, and little is to do. This was what I was mentioning earlier. The resistance is minuscule because none of his troops care about Macbeth. Macbeth has become totally self-absorbed. Enter Sir the castle. Another part of the field, now scene 8. Enter Macbeth. Why should I play the Roman fool and die on my own sword? He's making a reference that since everything is lost, he's the only thing, his troops are all given up. He's really all alone here. You know, where the Roman fool would be the ideal that the Romans would, when all was lost, would commit suicide, but die by their own swords because of the shame of their defeat. Why I'm not going to play that Roman calling them fools for doing it, while I see lives and the gashes do appear upon them. Enter Macduff, turn hellhound. Again, if we have any doubts about how everyone perceives Macbeth at this time as a hellhound, they exchange their words, or I have no words, Macduff. My voice is my sword, that bloodier villain than terms can give. You're so bad, I don't even have words that can describe you. They fight. Macbeth, still, thou losest labor, as easy mayest thou the interchant air with thy keen sword impresses as make me bleed. Let fall thy blade on vulnerable crests. I bear a charmed life, which must not yield to one of woman born. So he's mocking him. He's trash talking them while they're fighting. You can't hurt me. No one can hurt me. I have a charmed life, and no one can hurt me except if they were born of woman. And then Macduff hits him with the final solution to the last riddle. Despair thy charm, and let the angel whom thou still hast served tell thee. Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. He wasn't born natural birth from his mother. He was like a cesarean section, a C-section. Okay? So he wasn't born naturally from woman. Boom. Cursed be that tongue that tells me so, for it hath cowed my better part of man. And be these juggling fiends no more believed. Who are the juggling fiends? Well, those weird sisters. The palter with us in the double sense. They played with me with these double meanings. They toyed with me. That keep the word of promise in our ear and break it to our help. And he says, I'll not fight thee. I'm not going to fight you now. You could actually beat me. These sisters were, you know, they were playing games with me. Double talk, double sense. I'll not fight thee. And Macduff says, okay. And note what he does here. Then yield thee, coward, and live to be the show and gaze of time will have thee, or our rare monsters are. He's basically saying to Macbeth what Lady Macbeth said to Macbeth earlier when she was challenging his manhood. You're not going to actually go back on what you said. You remember the scene? You're not going to. What kind of a man are you? We said we're going to kill the king. We're going to kill the king. Now you're backing off. You coward, you unmanly person. Well, now Macduff does the same thing, and Macbeth lets that pride get to him, just as it did with Lady Macbeth. So he says, I will not yield to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet, and to be baited with the rabble's curse. It's still the baited, coming back to the bear baiting from before. Though Burnham would become to Dunsinane, and thou opposed be of no woman born, yet I will try the last. Before my body I throw my warlike shield, lay on Macduff, and damned be him that first cries holding up. And they fight, but they exit. Okay? But they're fighting. It's again, you know, is this a noble act on Macbeth's part? How are we supposed to read this? Now he knows the gig is up. Now he knows he has no supernatural protections. And he's about to walk away, and then Macbeth goads him on. What are you, a coward? What kind of a man are you? Which again hooks Macbeth. But it also is suggestive that Macbeth now has a bit of that which was in him before, because now doesn't seem as manic. And it's trying to be, perhaps to some extent, noble. Before my body, I throw my warlike shield. Okay, I will not yield to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet. I have my pride. Really? Really? You have pride, the things he's done? How are we supposed to react to that? Yeah, we're almost done, guys. I'm going to take a look at those comments once I finish, because we're just about there, okay? So retreat, flourish, enter Drummond College, Malcolm, Seward, Ross, the others, things. I would, the friends we missed were safe, arrived. Malcolm pointed, Macduff is missing, and your noble son. He's talking to Seward. This addresses the question that you brought up earlier, right? Macduff is missing, and your noble son. He's talking to Seward. Seward's noble son is missing. We know he's dead. And Ross is the one, Ross, bearer of bad news more than once. Ross is the one who informed Seward. So you can see that parallel. Remember, it was Ross who informed Macduff about his loss. And Ross now informs Seward, your son, my lord, has paid a soldier's debt. He only lived but till he was a man. The which no sooner had his prowess confirmed in the unshrinking station where he fought, but he, like a man, he died. And Seward, then he is dead. I am brought off the field, okay. But here's what it is. Seward asked the father, had he his hurts before, in front, before him, in front of him? I, on the front. Why then, God soldier be he? Had I as many sons as I have hairs, I would not wish them to a fairer death, and so his knell is knolled. He is worth more sorrow, and that I'll spend for him. He's worth no more. They say he parted well and paid his score, and so God be with him. Here comes newer comfort. All right. So yeah, it is a bit of an awkward scene. It feels like it should be more developed. I think we have to read that in, again, this idea of nobility and nobility of these who have come to take down the evil hound dog that is Macbeth. And of course, here we have Macduff enters in, carrying Macbeth's head. Hail, King, for so thou art, behold. And they all hail Malcolm. Hail, King of Scotland. Hail, King of Scotland. And Malcolm then ties it all in. A nice, neat, packaged ending of this dead butcher and his fiend-like queen, who asked his thought by himself, and violent hands took off her life. This is where we find out that she killed herself. Because note, we weren't told that before. Okay, it's Malcolm telling us that she killed herself, and now all is good. All right, it's a bit of a rush towards the end, but we are going later than we usually do, and I know there's going to be a few questions here. So, here we are. So yeah, these questions. I see some here in the group chat, but they came at different times. So hit them now. Who's got questions? Who's concerned? You all should be, to some extent. I still have questions. I have questions every time I read any Shakespeare. There's always questions. Most importantly is to understand, you know, the main, most important sequence of events. You have to understand what transpires. You have to understand the plot before you're able to then delve into it and do a proper analysis. Okay? And Macbeth lends itself to that. The plot is pretty basic. We don't have multitude of subplots, which we get in a lot of other Shakespeare plays. Okay?
Sir?
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. As said before, in the beginning, when Banquo seems to warn Macbeth about the sisters, saying they're only telling you half truth and be careful.
Yeah.
So now when Macbeth is finally seeing that they lied to him, it's not like they lied to him, they tricked him, they told him what he wants to hear. can it be understood also a little bit, maybe a tiny bit, that he is mourning his friend's death? He has a little bit of regret.
Mourning Banquo's death?
Yes.
I don't see anything in the text to suggest that. I understand where you're getting that from, because now he seemed, oh my God, Banquo, you were right. But A, that was a long time ago. And B, he seems to have other things on his mind. I think you could certainly you could show the relationship that you just did, that this is now showing that Banquo was right when Banquo says, you know, Macbeth, you got to be a little careful here, because sometimes, you know, they may be trying to trick you, telling you things you want to hear when actually they're, you know, they're looking to do you harm. So absolutely, that connection is there. Whether Macbeth acknowledges that or feels remorse for it, I certainly don't see it, but I haven't looked for it.
Well, but maybe it's also a little bit in the beginning when he talks about the queen's death, because the first 2 times I read it very differently to how I understand it now. The way he's referring to time and to the past and to the present, and how he's realizing that he made an enemy out of everybody around himself.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly in the context in which we see him in this Act 5. That speech that well, let's quickly pull it up, because it really is important. So here what we have here is the recognition that he's made enemies all around him. I think is more obvious elsewhere, but is certainly impacting his state of mind here. Okay, because here it's very reflective, self-reflective. Okay, he doesn't seem to be talking to anyone but himself here. All right, it's more about him, and it's very universal. But it has, and this is what makes it so intriguing and challenging. It's universal, but then we see things like the brief candle, which reminds us of Lady Macbeth, and since she just died, it's a natural understanding of her walking with the candle. Okay, but these things, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, is often read as just a very nihilistic view of life in general.
Yeah, okay, but before, when he talks about the candle, yes, he could be reference to Lady Macbeth who kept the candle, but we also can understand candle as being life itself. And so,
why?
Well, light usually is life.
Okay, yeah, in order to do something like that, okay, because here we have nothing here to suggest that other than its context within the overall. So yes, in this case, and I think you know where I'm going with this, because I want you to be careful if you're gonna, especially if you're gonna be bringing this into your final essay, for all of you, okay? So yes, we certainly have out brief candle. Brief candle is light, and it certainly is life, okay? In this context, right?
Yeah, but it's also tying into the fact that Lady Macbeth had a candle all the time next to her in the end.
Right.
And was she clinging to life? Was she clinging to light as in truth? So yeah, I think I can make the argument here that he's speaking about life and about truth and about honesty. He's reflecting back to where he came from.
Okay, so certainly about life, right? What do you mean by truth?
But the truth is that when he started off this whole journey, when we see him in the beginning, especially in the first 2 scenes, how loyal he is to the king, and how we know that the king was anointed by God, and how, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then he's deviating off the path, so he kind of lost his light.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting, because if you were to go that, you'd have to trace all the light imagery throughout the play, right? And you'd have to show how that is a consistent image and symbol through the play. But yeah, I mean, in general, certainly. But it's interesting, because you're saying, like, at the very beginning, we see how loyal he is to the king, right?
Yes.
Is he?
he's a great warrior.
Mhm.
I don't know if he's loyal to the king. We never see that he's talking about yes, he does. He does speak about admiration for the king, because he says afterwards, when he bemoans the death, he says something to the sense of noble or something else.
Right, but he still turns on the king pretty quickly. Remember, and it goes back to the assignment that I gave you last assignment. How does he react after the first time he's with the witches, where the witches say he's going to be king? And as we discussed, and as most of you pointed out, yeah, he is sorely tempted. He'd like to be king. And that it already puts into question this idea of, yes, everyone talks about Duncan is great. This guy is doing wonderful things for Macbeth, and he's a really nice guy. This is emphasized to us. It's one of the reasons it's emphasized, which is one of the reasons why it demonstrates how heinous an act it is by killing him. Because it's not just that, he's your king, but he's a really nice guy and he's looking out for you. But Macbeth, almost from the very beginning that he hears the prophecy, seems to kind of like the idea. Certainly at that stage, it's not nearly what we see when he actually does the killing, and God knows when we get to Act 4 and 5. But even at the beginning, and it's a great question, because this is one of the things we have to ask about Macbeth's evolution in this play. In the same way that we have to look at Lady Macbeth's changing sense, but of course, much more so with Macbeth, because we just have much more of Macbeth in the play. And of course, seeing them as a unit. But yeah, in terms of the idea of out, brief candle, the candle being light and light being life, absolutely. All right, that goes without saying. And it ties in to both the specifics of Lady Macbeth with her candle, and then does lead us to ask, why does she want that light? Is that her last attempt, feeble attempt that it is, to hold on to life? Because the irony is, she's insisting, no, you got to leave these candles on all the time. That's the order she gave. But even with the candles on all the time, she kills herself.
Yeah. But can we move on a second to
Sure.
the part where Macduff is heckling Macbeth and calls on his manhood?
Yeah.
What do you make out of this in general? Because is that really why Macbeth fought him? Or did he fight him because...
This is one of the great questions about the play.
He's a warrior. That's what he did. This is what was being described in the beginning. And also, that's a very big question here, because if he's the grade of warrior that is being described in the beginning, how detailed it said that he cut him from navel to neck, or whatever the expression was, maybe this was just a very feeble attempt to fight back, because he's a warrior. He can do it.
Well, now, he was a warrior. He certainly becomes a monster. I don't think there's any doubting that. He does monstrous things. And your question, if I'm understanding it correctly, is a question I've had, is at this moment, when he's taunted by Macduff, what are you, a coward? Okay, I will not yield to kiss the ground before young Malcolm's feet. Now, of course, the situation is very bizarre. If you were to take this out of context, it sounds like a noble act, if he doesn't think that Malcolm is the rightful king. So, and yes, the question is, does this, when he just up here realizes that the witches fooled him, they tricked him, that it was all for naught in many ways, that everything they predicted did come true, but this thing about his protection was a riddle, and he fell for it. And then he's walking away. Remember, he says to Macduff, you weren't born from a woman. Okay, I'm walking away from you. I'm not going to fight you now. Okay, so that's not very noble. We don't know what that is. We don't have time to analyze before Macduff calls him out. And then he comes back with this. Even though Birnam would become to Dunsinane, and thou oppose being of no woman born, yet I will try the last. I don't have an answer for you on that one. Okay? It is one of those things that can be argued in different ways. What this means. Is this him ending in some kind of noble, honorable way? That's hard to justify given his monstrous behavior. But it does speak a bit to what drove him to the monstrous behavior, right? So much of it was predicated, obviously, on what the three witches, the weird sisters, told him. Much of it was driven by the encouragement of Lady Macbeth. The prophecies that the supernatural forces in this play talk about, they all come true. The question is, did Macbeth, one of the many questions, did Macbeth have to take the actions he took in order for the prophecies to come true? Would that have happened? I mean, there's no way of answering that absolutely. But it is, I think, very much one of the questions that the play is asking us to contemplate. How much of this is because of Macbeth's actions? And that allows us, if we think that way, when we come back up to the tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow speech, when it ends with this seemingly nihilistic signifying nothing, it's all meaningless. Okay? If we go out, brief candle, that is life. Life, just in case we want reaffirm, is but a walking shadow. He's talking about life. Brief candle. It's a poor player that struts and frets its hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. That's nihilistic. It's atheistic. If we look at it as life in general, it is a tale told by an idiot, fool idiot, full of sound and fury, but signifying nothing.
Sorry, can I jump in here a second again? Yeah. You say it's a nihilistic and an atheistic approach. For Macbeth in that moment, because he lost, he did not speak like that in the beginning of the play.
No.
And never again have we seen it. So is it because he's losing? So now all of a sudden everything is useless and
it's a great question, because at this stage you say he's losing, right?
He's losing. He lost his best friend.
Yeah, but have they really been best friends for the last little while? Remember, we saw he doesn't tell her about what he's going to do to Banquo. So he's already moved away. He doesn't tell her what he's going to do to Macduff's family.
He doesn't, but yet I still think that she is his pride. She is everything he has. He has no kids.
I think we can say certainly in the first two acts she is. I think that she's still relevant. And yes, and that's one of the things that we have to explore, given that this is what he says right after she dies. But certainly the relationship between the two is not what it was in Act 1 or Act 2. They have distanced themselves. Once they achieve that goal of becoming king, things fall apart in many ways. And we know that they're different. Is she still his only friend? Probably. Is this all about her? Is this him just grieving for the death of Lady Macbeth? It's certainly initiated by it, but there's so much more here. And I don't think he's acknowledging at this stage, yes, he's acknowledging that he lost her. I don't think he's acknowledging at this stage that he's going to lose his kingdom, because he still believes that he is invincible. And again, notice how the structure of the play, then immediately we get this messenger who comes in and deconstructs one of his security blankets, if you will, in terms of the woods are moving. And then, and I think it's an important point, we never have a chance to really Contemplate this because, again, the structure of this fifth act, boom, 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 boom. Things go from here to the end lightning fast. So it's only at the end that we, as you guys are all doing and I'm doing now, trying to piece all these different things together to try and put them together in some kind of coherent understanding of Macbeth and the play in general. Okay? All right, now that being said, and I know it's 3 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap this up, but I do want to, I'm going to post your, and those of you who weren't here at the beginning, this will be news, but I do want to briefly show you your final exam, which I'm going to be posting today. And this is going to be due in 2 weeks, on the 8th of June. All right, and let's really hope that this recording converts, because there's only like 13 or 14 of you here, and we've touched a lot of things that I think you will recognize. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay, sir, I'm sorry. I found it. I found the part what I argued to you before, that Macbeth, like, we didn't have a chance to leave the scene. And yes, on page 3375, you see exactly like Macbeth and Lennox leave the scene, and then only after we enter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I should have known you were right, but I still had to fight for that.
That's okay. Okay, so here is your final essay. Again, I'll be posting it shortly, by this evening in any case. You're going to notice right away that the questions are much shorter. You can choose one of the following. Is Lady Macbeth responsible for her husband's rise to the throne and his subsequent downfall? You will need to discuss how the relationship develops in the play. Does Macbeth have control over his own destiny, or is his fate predetermined by forces beyond his control? Yes, you have to do a little. I'm not giving you as much as I gave you at the midterm. You have to be thinking about what you can use to answer one of these two questions. One of these two questions. I put it, the answer should be, because it's the final, 750 to 1,000 words. Again, don't get hung up on the word count. All right?
Sir,
yeah.
Like in the first question, like we have to ask ourselves, like, what did Macbeth did so her husband rise to the throne?
You have to, I really try to keep this as basic as possible. You are going to make an argument. Remember, we talked about a thesis statement. A thesis statement is a position you take that is arguable. You are going to argue either that Lady Macbeth is responsible for her husband's rise and fall, or you're going to say Lady Macbeth was not responsible. Okay? And then whichever position you choose, you want to be able to support that position using 3 main issues, right? For the 3 main paragraphs.
Sir,
yeah.
In the second question, that's a little bit more complex, because you're not exactly only taking everything from the text, you're also taking things from your own personal baggage here. Because yes, the text tells you whether he actually did all those things, but there's a lot of questions in morale. It's not so black and white. You can't only use the text here.
Well, you can take any of your own personal experiences and understandings and ideas on this, but you have to show that whatever position you're taking regarding destiny and predetermination is confirmed in the play itself.
Okay.
And that's, you know, and that's the case pretty much. Yes, the second question is more of a challenge, but you and a little and much more complex. Well, not much more complex in certain ways. But remember, you have to substantiate your claims with evidence from the text, even if the text disagrees with your own personal beliefs. It's an important distinction to make. If I, just as an example, let's say I believe in predetermination. I'm not saying whether I do or not. In my own life, okay, I believe that there are powers beyond my control that determine how I'm going to act and what I'm going to achieve and where I'm going to be in the future. If I'm going to argue that Macbeth's fate is controlled by predetermining forces beyond his control, I can't just say, this is what I believe. I have to say, we see this in the text. It's a combination, because obviously you are talking about the concept and the philosophical, theological understanding of predetermination. So yes, in many ways, question 2 is more complex. So be wary if you choose to tackle it.
Because here's something that probably is not very smart to say on a recording that everybody can use, but he has no control that he meets the 3 sisters. That's predetermined. But we, as well as Macbeth, have control over our actions. That is not predetermined.
Okay. It's predetermined by what? Meeting the 3 witches.
Well, the fact that predetermined by faith, predetermined by determinism, the fact that you and me are sitting here was predetermined. The fact that I signed up for this class.
I would suggest that you go and see and question whether or not the witches were seeking Macbeth out. In which case, it's not predetermination. If I set out to wait for you outside of Tav College, and then we run into each other, that's me. I controlled that situation.
Yes, they seeked him out, but he had no control over the fact that they seeked him out.
Yeah, okay, you have to be careful with that, because then you can say that about anything. That's a circular argument. You can't go that route, all right? Because then everything goes down that road, and that you can't do an analysis if you're going to get into a circular argument, okay? So you have to go beyond that. In terms of if people were there and set up to meet Macbeth, the question is designed to address the issue of, if he hadn't killed the king, would he still become king? Okay, if he hadn't followed through on certain things, that's why there's actually an interconnection between the 2 questions, right? Because in this case, we're saying Lady Macbeth, was she responsible? If she
I understand the first question, but the argument is Lady Macbeth is responsible for him rising, but it's not her responsibility of him falling.
See, that would be, I like that, but then you have to be sure you word that properly in your introduction and your thesis statement. That's an interesting take, because then the argument could be, well, if she was responsible for pushing him to rise to the throne, but she wasn't there pushing him to demise, she's kind of out of the picture when he falls apart because they separate, but was her first actions, because if she hadn't pushed him at the beginning, then he wouldn't have done all the other things he did.
But him falling is because of his action. He did not have control of himself.
Well,
doing whatever comes to his mind.
But that's his choice then.
Yeah, that's his choice. But
so then he does have control.
Yeah, but if it's his choice, then it's also his choice to listen to her. I'm having a hard time with that question.
Yeah, I'm not giving you a simple question, either of these. This is the whole point, is to think about these things. Okay, but again, and I will caution you, watch out for the circular arguments though, because then you keep just tracing it back. Well, if this hadn't happened, and this hadn't happened, and this hadn't happened, then you're going to trace that all the way back to.
But can you say at the end, she have some responsibility of him falling and some responsibility of him not falling?
I will tell you this. Both of these questions can be answered either way. There's not one. Yeah, is Lady Macbeth responsible? You can argue she is, or you can argue she isn't. Both are valid answers. Both are valid. Does Macbeth have control over his own destiny? Yes, he does. No, he doesn't. Both can be argued. I have argued all 4 of those positions in essays.
But can you put the two argument at the same time? She have responsibility and she don't have responsibility.
Yes, but then
it can be argued.
Yes, it can, but I would caution you on that, because that gets it a little more complex. So you're going to have to be very clear why, if she is responsible for his rise, why she isn't responsible for his downfall.
Yeah, because you have to bring evidence from the text.
Yeah, that would be an interesting way of approaching it. Absolutely. This is why I want to talk about this in class. It's not like our midterm, when I gave you 5 or 6 different ways to answer the question. You have to come up with it yourself. The only thing I say in this first one is you have to discuss the relationship, obviously. This one,
the relationship of the first scenes where the relationship was strong, and the end scene where they had their relationship become weaker.
well, yeah, I mean, and right up to her death, what is the relationship of that? So these are more difficult than your midterm, as they should be. They're not radically different or more difficult. They just require you to. I would strongly suggest, as I always do, that you need to outline this. You need to brainstorm for these ones, and I'm here to give you feedback on any of your ideas. But we have spent over 5 weeks with Macbeth. You have all the videos posted, okay? And the classes that recorded are out there. You have a lot more at your disposal to help you, guide you with these questions than you had for the midterm, okay? So yes, you probably will want to go back and look at those, some of those videos. But before you do, think about what position you want to take, and you can look at your text again very carefully. But once you make your decision, start outlining it, getting an idea of how you want to approach it. Okay? Are there any questions regarding the final essay? If you have questions that come up, as always, contact me. I can respond to your emails. I can set up a one-on-one Zoom meeting with you. I cannot encourage you enough to do that. It can really make a difference. Okay? You have 2 weeks. I know you're busy with a lot of other things, but get started the earlier the better. And yeah, just remember as well, be sure that you are substantiating your claims and your position with evidence from the text. That's my most important concern. Are we good? Okay. If this records, I will be posting it by this evening. If it doesn't, I will do another. It'll be a shame if it doesn't, because this was a great class, by the way. Thanks, everyone, for the questions. I miss it so much. Anyways, if it doesn't record, I will do a pre-recorded video on Act 5. Okay? But hopefully it will.
Can you focus on the part where the Lady Macbeth dies and Macbeth is talking about that?
If this doesn't record, I guarantee I'll be focusing on the same things that I focused on in this class.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries there. I think you know the importance of that reaction to Lady Macbeth's death. I think it's very, for what it's worth, that speech, that soliloquy is important. And look at all the soliloquies. Okay, I mean, the play is entitled Macbeth. Okay, so Macbeth is the focus. Lady Macbeth, very important, don't get me wrong. But anyways, take it for what it's worth. Have fun with it. And hit me up with any questions you may have. And thank you all for being patient. This was a much longer class than we usually do. Yeah, everyone, always feel free to send me your outlines, your first attempts at thesis statements, anything. Okay, I'm not going to rewrite it for you, but I will respond to it. I promise. Those of you, and a number of you have. So those of you who have, you know that it can go. And I'll even set up one-on-one Zoom meetings with you. I can't emphasize that enough. Okay, so do not hesitate with that. Are we good? All right, everyone. Be safe out there as always, and keep your eye out. I will let you know when I'm still trying to think of that. I may just give you I may give you an extra day or two for that in-class assignment. I think I'm going to get it out to you this week. If there's holidays and things like that, just let me know. If there's any issues with the timeline for that, we'll take care of it, okay? I promise. I don't want it to be in any way burdensome to you. I want it to help you prepare your final essay. So I'll probably send it out in the next couple of days. All right, and the final exam question I will be posting tonight. All good? All right, everyone. We'll see you. Well, when we see you, and we'll talk as soon as you want to get in touch with me. Bye, everyone.